You're listening to Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com with myself, Total Biscuit. Yes, indeed. Okay, so I'll cover a few things before I go on. I would like to remind you all that Shoutcraft is happening on Saturday at 5 p.m. British Standard Time. It's 12 p.m. Eastern or 6 p.m. Central European Summer Time. tinyurl.com/shoutcraft. It's always a good laugh. Pittles really seem to love it. We had like almost 800 people watching last Saturday. Let's see if we can beat it. I'll give away some more beta keys. Sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? And also the beta giveaway on the channel on YouTube, youtube.com/TotalHalibut. I'll be announcing the first 5 of those tonight. There is a new video sitting in the private encoding segment, just waiting to be properly processed into HD. Really big 21-minute match. Very good indeed. I'm sure you will love it. So if you're into the StarCraft 2s, then it would be worth you tuning into both of those things. In the meantime, let's talk about World of Warcraft, shall we? It's been difficult to enthuse myself lately, but with all of this information, it's good to have something to look forward to. And to be honest, I don't think I'm going to be raiding for much longer at this rate. The guild, in general, has lost the fire for it. They're not interested anymore. Getting stuck on Syndragoza because 2 of your raiders constantly lag due to graphical effects on the screen that they can't seem to get rid of, that's a bit of a problem. It makes it almost impossible to kill the boss. We would love to start hard modes, but it can't happen as a direct result of that. Pain in the ass. Whatever the case, I'll probably be going back to Star Trek Online for a little while, because they've just implemented difficulty settings for every single mission. Very cool idea. Something that WoW could perhaps learn from right there. You get to go to a mission, you get to pick 3 levels of difficulty. The harder you do it on, the more ships there are, the harder they hit, the harder they are to kill, of course, the harder the mission is, but you get rewarded better. Yeah, you get really nice stuff. So that sounds ideal. I mean, the big problem I had with Star Trek Online, funnily enough, was that it was too easy. What's the point in having a really awesome and elegant combat system whereby it takes into account maneuvering, shield arcs, weapon arcs, things like that, and yet then all you need to do to win is hit the space bar? Yeah, that's not good at all. So it's going to be good. It's going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy that. So any of you fancy reactivating your accounts, the Cynical Fleet is up and there are plenty of us ready to go. Alternatively, of course, you can wait till May the 7th when they're going to be having a free trial as well as Recruit a Friend kicking off. Sounds like a good idea to me. Okay, so let's talk about the other change. This was somewhat overshadowed, of course, by the colossal drama surrounding this raid change. And this is regarding badges. Badges, mushroom, and snake. Mostly badges, however. So, what's going to be happening? Well, there's going to be changes in regards to the way that badges work. Indeed, badges, technically, aren't going to exist anymore. Now, before you get too excited, bear in mind that this is a phantom change. It's not in any way, shape, or form a big change. It doesn't get rid of badges. It doesn't get rid of all of the problems surrounding badges at all. Not at all. What it does do is it makes badges just that little bit more sensible. What it's effectively doing, and you can go check this out on MMO Champion, I'll also put a link in the show notes on cynicalbrit.com for you. Changes are going to be happening with the badges in terms of both PvP and PvE. So, the different tiers of badges are gone. There are only going to be 2 tiers of badges at any given time. And they're both going to be point-based. Now, PvE is going to have hero points, and it's going to have valor points. Hero points are, according to this change, low tier, easy to get PvE points. The maximum cap to how many you can own will exist, but there's no cap on how quickly you can get them. Earned from most dungeons, currently like the Emblems of Triumph. There's also going to be valor points. High tier, harder to get PvE points, maximum cap to how many you can own, as well as a cap to how many you can earn per week. Earned from Dungeon Finder, Daily Heroic, and from raids, most like Emblems of Frost. Okay, now what's going to be happening is that every time they increase the tier of raiding, they introduce a new tier with a new level of gear, and they are moving everything down a peg. So, any gear that could be gotten with valor points then becomes available with hero points. So instead of having 4 kinds of badges like you have right now, you only ever have 2. Now, this is not a real change. This doesn't in any way, shape or form mitigate the problems with the badge system. It is for convenience sake and for the sake of clarity. That's it. I would have loved to say I was excited by this change, but it's procedural. It's a mechanical change. It might as well be a UI alteration. That's all it is. It's nothing special at all. That's the really sad thing about it. An opportunity right there to change everything. An opportunity to, say, remove the ability to get tier 10 epics from running Utgard freaking Keep. What about that as an opportunity? No, not going to be happening. Not going to be happening at all. Here's the new badge system, folks. Same as the old badge system. And PvP is kind of getting a similar treatment with Honor and Conquest points. They're harder to get stuff, so that's the tier system right there. Now, it's sad to see that they have stuck with this old idea, with the idea of tiered badge system advancing the way that it is. Now, the way that a tiered badge system should work, and bear in mind, this badge system will be okay for the first 6 months or so. It will. Because it will separate the scrubs from those who are able to do the harder content. That's it. It's the way that it used to be back at the start of this particular expansion, when they were giving the badges of heroism or whatever they were for 5-man heroics and 10-man stuff, and the badges of valor for 25-man. So they had clearly stipulated the difficulty levels and had given appropriate rewards for that, and I'm fully in support of that. The problem is that when you advance the tiers, you stop giving appropriate rewards. My apologies. So, there are two ways of looking at what is appropriate and what is not in terms of loot. The first way of looking at it is that you should get a certain level of loot for doing a certain level of difficulty. So, if you are able to kill something at tier 8, you should get tier 8 epics. If you are killing something at tier 9, you should get tier 9 epics, etc., etc., ad infinitum. However, the opposing view to this, which holds some validity, is that appropriate rewards are based on the stuff that you're about to go into. So, in order to successfully tackle tier 10, you need tier 9. However, you can now get tier 9 from Naxxramas. You can get it from badges if you want. You can get it from heroics if you want. Now, of course, on first observation, that appears not to be an appropriate or proportionate reward for doing a level of content which is quite frankly trivial. However, you run into a problem. The problem is simply this. The progression path is broken. Fundamentally broken. How is it broken? Raid obsolescence. That's why. Raids become obsolete when you get too many tiers of them. So, let's go back in the midst of time, ladies and gents, and let's have a look at how the content at the start of Wrath worked. You had Naxxramas, your big raid, you then had a couple of small ones. You had Obsidian Sanctum, and you had the Eye of Eternity. And you also had VOA, which I wish would die in a fire. And hopefully will not be coming back in any way, shape, or form, and there doesn't appear to be any indication of that in Cataclysm, and let me say, hallelujah for that. Awful, awful idea. The worst idea, perhaps. Trivializing raiding. So, you have that set up, and you had your heroism and you had your valor. And then you introduced a new form. Yeah? You were able to go into tier 8, and you were in tier 8 stuff. And it's after that things really got wrong. Yeah, things started to go badly at that point. Because once they introduced Triumph badges, they made Conquest available for running anything. Yeah? So, which is more difficult, Naxxramas or Ulduar? Answer should be obvious, it's Ulduar. And yet, you were being given similar level epics. Indeed, some identical epics for running Naxxramas as you were for running Ulduar. Which makes no sense whatsoever. But the problem is, of course, that once you get to this point, say you get to tier 10. Yeah, let's take the situation right now. Who runs Naxxramas outside of the weekly? Nobody. Simple as that. And the weekly is not even what I would call running Naxxramas. It's pick one boss, kill it, get the hell out of there. Anyone looking to get level, tier 7 epics, then tier 8 epics, then tier 9 epics, they can't do it anymore. They can't. They can't follow that progression path, which means people late to the party are boned. If you got up there at the start, if you started at the start of Wrath and you progressed at a reasonable level, then you are okay. Yeah? You progress and you don't really have to worry about anything in that regard. You'll get your set at the appropriate difficulty level, then you'll get the next set at the appropriate difficulty level, then the next, and blah, blah, blah. And that's fine to some degree, but still I object on principle to the idea that someone can get epics that I had by putting in way less effort. That seems to trivialize everything, doesn't it? It's against the principles, it breaks the progression curve. However, I understand why Blizzard puts it in, because raid obsolescence is a factor. Nobody wants to run the old stuff anymore. So how do you fix it? Well, there's a couple of ways. Firstly, what you can do is you can look at the idea of providing normal and heroics for everything, which is exactly what's going to be happening. I think this may be something that people haven't really realized. The idea of being able to do hard modes of previous instances, which still reward good loot, give cool achievements, and provide a fun challenge, will mitigate raid obsolescence. It will. Right, if there was a hard mode, say heroic Naxxramas, would you do it? Well, perhaps that's a bad question, because Naxxramas is the most overused raid in the entirety of WoW. In the history of World of Warcraft, nobody wants to go back in there. That's going to mitigate some of the raid obsolescence right there. And that will help. However, it depends on whether or not those hard modes are gear-intensive or not. Because if they're intensely gear-intensive, that's a terrible sentence, I don't care, then you're going to run into the same issue. New players aren't going to get to run that content, so they're going to miss out. We're talking about players who maybe have rolled up alts, and they want to see the instance from the perspective of another class. But more to the point, you've got people that have not reached that level yet. People that have started the game later than everyone else and are still leveling up. They miss out. When was the last time that you saw a big raid on Naxxramas? Remotely regular. Does that happen? I would expect that maybe it does from time to time, but it's pretty rare. I have not seen one on my server for ages. Ulduar, same point. Ulduar hard modes, of course, even worse. No one wants to go do those. How do you fix it? Well, while the 10-man hard mods will help, and they will 10-man and 25, of course, of all instances. That will be helpful. It's not the complete solution, for the reasons I've just given. But as far as I'm concerned, what Blizzard needs to do is properly incentivize going back into those old dungeons by giving them a twist. They've got to do something different. Now, there are a couple of possibilities. The first of these is a remix mode. I'm suggesting changing boss mechanics round, altering boss mechanics, maybe even changing the entire order of the instance, shaking it up, putting trash packs in different places, putting bosses in different places, mixing it up, shaking it up and saying, hey, you can go back here and you can see new stuff. Maybe rotate some loot in. Maybe move some loot in from a previous dungeon, or indeed a current one. Say you're doing tier 8 content, and some Ulduar items appeared in tier 7, but they remixed the tier 7 content so that it was actually a little bit harder now. Maybe they've changed the mechanics around. That would mix things up. That would make people go back there. Now, another suggestion is a boss rush mode. Blizzard seems to have embraced the idea of multiple difficulty settings, but they seem to have ignored what a number of different games allow for. They allow for different ways of experiencing their content once you've beaten it the first time. Boss rush. It's something from Spectacle Fighters. You'll find it in games like Bayonetta. I believe games like Devil May Cry and probably other things like that also have it. And boss rush is simply cutting out the fat and doing what's enjoyable about raiding. Same principle for a Spectacle Fighter. You know, the big deal about games like God of War and things like that is the idea of killing big bosses. Killing gods, indeed. And yet, you don't really fancy doing that again if the boss isn't harder, and if you don't get rid of the crap that's between him. So once I've beaten an instance into the floor, why don't you, say Blizzard, allow me to boss rush it? Do all the bosses and none of the trash. Literally. And then add in a few elements to it. Firstly, a sidekick mode. How about you yield additional rewards when you bring in people to that boss rush that do not have the level of gear that you do? Yeah, that they are not overgeared. In fact, they might even be undergeared. If they are appropriate level of gear and you bring them in, you gain additional rewards. Perhaps they're granted additional rewards as well. Guaranteed loot drops, guaranteed badges, things like that. And what you can also do is you can make it competitive. You can make boss rush mode a competitive thing. You can have it actually time how long it takes you to clear the instance. And maybe link achievements, link rankings into it, things like that. Now the point of the matter is simply this. This badge system is as bad as the old one. If you want to alleviate the issues whereby new players are balked, they are in serious trouble when trying to get onto the level of content that other people are currently on, then you have to incentivize going back to old instances in a way that is fun, enjoyable, unique, interesting, and doesn't make me want to blow off my own face. How about that? Wouldn't that be lovely? My name is Tall Biscuit. You're listening to Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com. Be right back after the break with the illusion of choice. Where's the button? Yes, indeed.